I was in shock because I was the only living witness, and Matthew was unconscious and had amnesia.
Matthew Broderick. The name alone conjures images of that iconic freeze frame from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the charming smile, the all-American boy who could do no wrong. But behind that squeaky clean image lies a story that Hollywood has tried to bury for decades. A story of a summer day in Ireland that ended in tragedy. A story where two innocent women lost their lives, and the man behind the wheel walked away with nothing more than a slap on the wrist.
And I realized I was terribly disappointed, so then I really got on the warpath, and
for 35 years, the full truth remained hidden, locked away behind carefully crafted public statements and strategic silence. But in 2022, Jennifer Grey, the woman who was there that day, finally broke that silence. August 5th, 1987.
There was like a hush. It's really like royalty is coming, you know, everybody feels it.
Two of Hollywood's brightest young stars were on a romantic getaway in Northern Ireland. Within hours, two women would be dead, and the course of multiple lives would be forever altered. The accident made headlines around the world, but the real story, the one that reveals the complexities of trauma, guilt, and a justice system that seemed to favor fame over fairness, that story has never been fully told. Until now. What really happened on that rain-soaked Irish road? Why did Matthew Broderick receive only a $175 fine for a crash that killed two people? How did Jennifer Grey carry the weight of being the sole conscious witness to a tragedy that happened just days before she became America's sweetheart? And why did it take over 3 decades for the truth to finally emerge?
It's very nice to have something else you care about and love, like a family, you know?
The summer of 1987 was supposed to be a golden moment for both of them. Matthew Broderick, just 25 years old, was riding high on the massive success of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The film had turned him into a household name, the embodiment of teenage rebellion and charm. He had just wrapped filming on Biloxi Blues and was at the peak of his young career. Jennifer Grey, 27, was on the verge of superstardom. Dirty Dancing was set to hit theaters in just a few weeks, and everyone who had seen it knew she was about to become a massive star. But there was something the public didn't know, something that Broderick and Grey had been carefully hiding from the Hollywood spotlight. They were in love. The two had met on the set of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where they played brother and sister, Ferris and Jeannie Bueller. The on-screen siblings who couldn't stand each other had fallen for each other behind the scenes. It was the kind of romance that tabloids would have devoured, but they kept it quiet, sneaking around, keeping their relationship away from prying eyes. After Ferris Bueller wrapped, their connection only deepened. By the summer of 1987, they were serious enough to plan a romantic getaway together. They chose Ireland, a place far from the Hollywood machine, where they could just be a young couple in love without cameras and reporters following their every move. Broderick had just finished his work on Biloxi Blues, and Grey had completed her publicity rounds for the soon-to-be-released Dirty Dancing. This was their moment, their escape. They flew into Northern Ireland with nothing but excitement and the promise of adventure. The plan was simple: rent a car, explore the countryside, and enjoy some time away from the pressures of their rapidly ascending careers. On August 5th, they picked up a rented BMW 316. The day started like any other vacation day, full of possibility and the kind of carefree energy that comes with being young, successful, and in love. They planned to drive from Irvinstown to Magorsbridge, taking in the scenic Irish countryside along the way. But this wasn't going to be just another romantic road trip. This was going to be the day that changed everything. The Irish countryside was beautiful, but it was also unfamiliar territory. As Broderick drove, something became immediately apparent. The roads were different here. In America, cars drive on the right side of the road. In Ireland, like the rest of the UK, they drive on the left. For an American driver used to years of muscle memory on the opposite side, this wasn't just a minor adjustment, it was a constant mental recalibration. As they drove, they stopped at a gas station to ask for directions. An off-duty police officer happened to be there, and when he heard their route, he didn't mince words. He told them their chosen path was just stupid. He even offered to lead them to a better, more sensible road, but Broderick declined. They were young, they were confident, and they wanted to stick to their original plan. The officer followed them for a few miles anyway, later reporting that Broderick wasn't driving fast, probably less than 40 miles per hour. Then the weather changed. A downpour hit, one of those sudden Irish rainstorms that turns roads slick and visibility poor. Broderick and Grey pulled over at another gas station, waiting for the worst of it to pass. But when they got back on the road, the pavement was still wet, the sky still gray and threatening. According to later reports, at some point during the drive, Grey leaned down to change the cassette tape in the player under the dashboard. Music was playing, they were talking, just two people enjoying a drive. And then, in an instant that neither of them would ever fully remember or understand, everything went wrong. Broderick's car crossed into the opposite lane. On a perfectly straight road, with no curves or obstacles, the BMW suddenly veered into oncoming traffic. Coming from the other direction was a Volvo, driven by 28-year-old Anna Gallagher. In the passenger seat was her mother, 63-year-old Margaret Doherty. Margaret had been confined to a wheelchair for 5 years due to multiple sclerosis. Anna, a devoted daughter, lived 45 miles away and would regularly make the trip to take her mother shopping. They had been hoping Anna would start a family of her own soon. This was supposed to be just another ordinary day, a mother and daughter spending time together. The collision was head-on and catastrophic. The impact was so violent that both cars were left mangled wrecks of twisted metal and shattered glass. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but for Margaret Doherty and Anna Gallagher, it was already too late. Both women were rushed to Ern Hospital, where they were pronounced dead. Jennifer Gray emerged from the wreckage in a state of shock and horror. She had suffered whiplash and bruising, but she was conscious, and she was covered in blood. Not her own blood, but Matthew's. She looked over at Broderick and thought he was dead. His face was cut up from the shattered windows, his leg was badly broken, ribs fractured, and he had suffered a concussion and a collapsed lung. He was unconscious, and to Gray, it looked like she had just lost the man she loved, but Broderick was alive. When the fire brigade arrived, they had to cut away the side of the BMW to get to him. One of the rescuers, Ken Ramsey, later recalled that as they worked to free him, Broderick kept asking the same question over and over. Did I hurt them? Did I hurt them? Gray stood there, alone on a country road in the middle of nowhere, the only conscious person at the scene. She didn't even know yet that there had been 2 other women in the other car. She didn't know that those women were already gone. All she knew was that the world had just shattered and nothing would ever be the same. But that wasn't the whole story. Matthew Broderick spent 4 weeks in the hospital in Belfast, recovering from his injuries. His leg was broken, his face required stitches, his ribs were fractured, and his lung had collapsed. But the physical injuries were nothing compared to what he faced legally. He was initially charged with causing death by dangerous driving, a serious offense that carried a potential sentence of up to 10 years in prison, 5 years for each death. But here's where the story takes a turn that left many people outraged. When Broderick finally appeared in court, something strange happened. The charge was reduced. Instead of death by dangerous driving, he was convicted of the lesser charge of careless driving. The punishment? A fine of £100, roughly $175 in US dollars. That's it. No jail time, no probation. Just a fine that most people could pay with a credit card. To return to the United States, Broderick paid $4,075 in bail. All told, he paid less than $5,000 for his role in an accident that took 2 lives. He was never charged with vehicular manslaughter, never faced the serious legal consequences that most people would face in a similar situation. The victim's family was devastated, and not just by the loss of Margaret and Anna. They were devastated by what they saw as a complete failure of justice. Martin Doherty, Margaret's son and Anna's brother, spoke to reporters and didn't hold back. He called the verdict a travesty of justice. He compared the punishment to what someone might get for hitting a dog in the street. 2 women were dead, and the man responsible paid what amounted to a parking ticket. The public reaction was swift and harsh. This wasn't just about Matthew Broderick. This was about what many saw as proof of a 2-tiered justice system, one set of rules for celebrities and another for everyone else. Would an ordinary person have gotten off so lightly? Would someone without fame and money and a team of lawyers have walked away with just a fine? But there was something else that complicated the story. Matthew Broderick claimed he had no memory of the accident, not just the moment of impact, but the entire day. He told investigators and reporters that he didn't remember getting up that morning, didn't remember making his bed, didn't remember anything until he woke up in the hospital with a strange feeling in his leg. The concussion had apparently wiped out his short-term memory, leaving him with complete amnesia about the events leading up to the crash. This raised questions that have never been fully answered. Was the amnesia real, or was it convenient? Medical experts confirm that severe concussions can cause retrograde amnesia, wiping out memories from before the injury. But skeptics wondered if Broderick's inability to remember protected him from having to explain why he crossed into the wrong lane on a straight, clear road. Without Broderick's testimony about what happened, the prosecution's case weakened. Jennifer Gray was the only conscious witness, and she had been looking down, changing a cassette tape. She didn't see the moment the car crossed lanes. The investigation tried to piece together what happened. Was it the rain? Was it confusion about which side of the road to drive on? Was it a momentary distraction? Nobody knew. Nobody could say for certain. And so Matthew Broderick, one of Hollywood's golden boys, walked out of that courtroom with nothing more than a fine. He returned to the United States, back to his career, back to his life. But the family he left behind in Ireland was left with nothing but grief and a burning sense that justice had not been served. And what happened next would shock everyone. For Jennifer Grey, the timing of the accident was almost unbearably cruel. Just 5 days after the crash, Dirty Dancing opened in theaters. The movie was an instant phenomenon. Audiences fell in love with Baby, the innocent young woman who finds herself through dance and romance. Jennifer Grey became America's sweetheart literally overnight. The film was everywhere, her face was on magazine covers, and everyone wanted a piece of the new star. But Grey was drowning in a trauma that no one could see. She later described it in heartbreaking terms. She said becoming America's sweetheart within 5 days of the accident created a psychological split she couldn't reconcile. The juxtaposition of that deep sorrow, the survivor's guilt, the horror of what she had witnessed, and then being celebrated as the new big thing, it didn't jibe. It didn't feel good to be the toast of the town when 2 women were dead and she had been there when it happened. Grey was the sole living witness to the crash. Broderick had been unconscious, suffering from amnesia. She was the only one who remembered getting in the car that day, the only one who could piece together the moments before impact. But she was also traumatized, suffering from severe whiplash that would later require surgery to avoid paralysis. The physical pain was manageable. The emotional pain was not. The relationship between Broderick and Grey didn't survive the tragedy. How could it? Every time they looked at each other, they were reminded of that day, of the blood and the twisted metal and the questions that would never be answered. In 1988, roughly a year after the accident, they broke up. Grey moved on quickly, at least on the surface. She was set up on a blind date with Johnny Depp, and the two began a whirlwind romance that led to an engagement. Grey described Depp as beautiful, sweet, loving, romantic. She said he was exactly what she needed at that moment, a soft landing after the hardest fall of her life. But the damage was done. Grey made a decision that would essentially end her career at its peak. She walked away from Hollywood. The survivor's guilt, the trauma, the inability to celebrate her success while carrying the weight of 2 deaths, it was too much. She later admitted that her head was never the same. Her ambition was never the same. She had become a star, but at what cost? In an even more drastic move, Grey decided to change her appearance. She underwent plastic surgery, including a nose job that completely altered her distinctive look. The nose that had been part of her signature charm, part of what made her Jennifer Grey, was gone. When she emerged from surgery, even her close friends didn't recognize her. She had effectively erased the person who had been in that car, the person who had become America's sweetheart. It was as if she was trying to become someone else entirely, someone who didn't carry that terrible memory. Matthew Broderick, meanwhile, tried to move forward with his career, but the accident cast a long shadow. He continued to work, taking on more serious dramatic roles in films like Glory in 1989, where he played a Union officer in the Civil War. But critics were harsh. While his co-stars Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman received praise, Broderick's performance was called tentative, lacking the weight necessary for such a serious role. Some suggested he was still too associated with Ferris Bueller, the irreverent teenager, to be taken seriously as a dramatic actor. The ghost of the accident followed him. He sought therapy to deal with what he later described as one of the most difficult experiences of his life. He told one interviewer that it was extremely difficult coming to grips with what happened, but that in time, he felt better about that terrible experience. Therapy helped, he said, but the haunting never fully went away. For the family in Ireland, the silence from Broderick was deafening. Martin Doherty, who had lost both his mother and his sister in the crash, said that after the accident, there was a note from Broderick saying how sorry he was, but no other contact. No phone call, no meeting, just a note and then silence. 15 years later, in 2002, there were reports that Broderick planned to meet with the Doherty family during a visit to Ireland. Broderick had married Sarah Jessica Parker in 1997, and the couple had purchased a vacation home in County Donegal. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for closure, for Broderick to finally face the family and for the family to hear directly from him. Martin Doherty said at the time that he would like a private meeting just between the family and Broderick. He wanted to reassure the actor that there were no bad feelings, that the family realized the accident had troubled him. Doherty had reached a place of forgiveness. He said publicly that Broderick didn't kill his mother and sister deliberately. There were strong feelings at the time of the accident, he admitted, but he had since forgiven Broderick and felt no anger toward him. But according to multiple reports, that meeting never happened. The closure that both sides might have found, the healing that could have come from a face-to-face conversation, it never materialized. The silence continued for another decade. In 2012, 25 years after the accident, Matthew Broderick made a decision that brought the tragedy roaring back into the headlines. He signed on to be the spokesperson for Honda, appearing in a multi-million-dollar Super Bowl commercial for the automotive brand. The commercial was meant to be fun, a nostalgic callback to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, with Broderick playing hooky for the day in various Honda vehicles. But the choice to put Matthew Broderick, a man who had killed 2 people in a car accident, in a commercial for a car company, it struck many people as tone-deaf at best and offensive at worst. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Social media erupted with criticism. How could Honda, how could Broderick think this was appropriate? Did no one think about the optics of having someone with his history promote cars? The controversy reached back to Ireland, where Martin Doherty was asked for his reaction. His response was measured but pointed. He said that Broderick wasn't the greatest choice of drivers, knowing his past. He acknowledged that it had been years since the accident, that he had forgiven Broderick. But he also made it clear that perhaps another actor might have been more appropriate for the advertisement. It was a gentle rebuke, but a rebuke nonetheless. Doherty also said something that revealed the wound had never fully healed. He mentioned that the meeting between Broderick and the family still hadn't happened, even after 25 years. He said there had always been something at the back of his mind that meeting with Broderick would close the book totally. But that closure, that final conversation, remained out of reach. The Honda controversy faded after the Super Bowl, as controversies do, but it left a mark. It reminded people that this wasn't just some forgotten incident from the past. This was something that continued to affect real people. A family that had lost 2 of its members and never received anything resembling real justice or accountability. For Broderick, the commercial firestorm was yet another reminder that no matter how much time passed, no matter how much therapy he went through, the accident would always be part of his story. He remained largely silent about the controversy, as he had remained largely silent about the accident itself for decades. When asked about it over the years, he would give brief, carefully worded statements about how difficult it was, how he struggled with it, but he never went into detail. He never fully opened up about what he remembered, what he felt, what he carried with him. And then, a decade after the Honda controversy, Jennifer Grey decided it was time to tell the truth. In May 2022, 35 years after the accident, Jennifer Grey published her memoir, Out of the Corner. The book was meant to be a comprehensive look at her life, her career, her relationships, but the chapter everyone wanted to read was about August 5, 1987. For the first time, Grey spoke openly and extensively about the crash, about what she saw, what she felt, and what she had carried with her for more than 3 decades. In interviews promoting the book, Grey didn't hold back. She told Entertainment Tonight that the car accident in Ireland was, she would say, one of the top 3 traumas of her life, maybe even the top one. She described how hard it is to put into words what it's like to have a near-death experience and be present for the death of other people. The trauma wasn't just about the crash itself. It was about being alone on a country road in the middle of nowhere with nobody else around or conscious. It was terrifying in a way that most people could never understand. Grey revealed something that shocked many people. She said that when she emerged from the wreckage, she thought Matthew was dead. She didn't know at first that there were 2 other women who had been tragically killed. She was the sole living witness because Broderick had survived but was unconscious, suffering from amnesia and very badly injured. The image of standing there covered in his blood, thinking she had lost him, thinking she was the only one left. It was seared into her memory forever. But Grey also did something unexpected. She defended Matthew Broderick. For years, there had been speculation and rumors. People wanted answers. They wanted to know why the accident happened, what caused it, whether there was more to the story than what had been publicly disclosed. Grey addressed those questions head-on. She said she wasn't holding any information that people seemed to think she had. She said people wanted an answer, and there was no answer because it was an accident. She emphasized that Broderick was a great driver. Nobody was drinking. There were no drugs, no recklessness, no criminal negligence. It was just an accident. A terrible, tragic accident that happened in a split second and changed multiple lives forever. Grey's defense of Broderick was striking because it came after 35 years of mostly staying silent. She could have thrown him under the bus. She could have implied that there was more to the story, that he bore more responsibility than he had admitted. But she didn't. Instead, she insisted that it was truly an accident. One of those horrible moments where everything goes wrong for reasons that no one can fully explain. She also revealed that she thinks about the family in Ireland all the time. The guilt never went away. The knowledge that two women lost their lives while she walked away with minor injuries, it haunted her just as much as it haunted Broderick. The whiplash she suffered was severe enough that she later required surgery to avoid paralysis, but she was alive. Margaret Doherty and Anna Gallagher were not. Grace spoke about how the accident led to so many other things in her life. The decision to leave Hollywood, the plastic surgery that changed her face, the years of therapy, the relationships that never quite worked. Everything traced back to that day in Ireland. She became America's sweetheart, but she never got to fully enjoy it because the guilt and the trauma overshadowed everything. The memoir and the interviews that followed finally gave the public the full story, at least as much of it as could be told. But they also left many questions unanswered. If Broderick was such a great driver, why did he cross into the wrong lane on a straight road? Was it the confusion about left side driving? Was it the rain? Was it a moment of distraction when Gray leaned down to change the tape? Was the amnesia genuine? Or did it protect him from having to answer questions he couldn't or wouldn't answer? These questions may never be fully resolved. What Gray's memoir did provide was a window into the emotional truth of the accident. The way it destroyed lives not just through death but through the weight of survival. It showed that sometimes there are no clear villains, no simple explanations. Sometimes terrible things happen and all we're left with is the aftermath. And what happened next would shock everyone. More than 37 years have passed since that rainy day in Ireland. Two women, Margaret Doherty and Anna Gallagher, lost their lives in an instant. They never got to see what the future held. Anna never got to start the family she and her husband had been hoping for. Margaret never got to see her grandchildren, never got to enjoy more years with the daughter who loved her enough to drive her to the store on a regular Tuesday. Matthew Broderick went on to have a successful career, though he never quite recaptured the golden boy status of his Ferris Bueller days. He married Sarah Jessica Parker and became a father. He continued to work in film and on Broadway, earning accolades and respect. But he has carried the weight of August 5, 1987, with him every single day. In his rare comments about the accident, he has made it clear that it haunts him, that therapy helped but didn't erase the pain. That coming to grips with what happened was one of the most difficult challenges of his life. Jennifer Grey's career never recovered from the trauma. She walked away from Hollywood at the moment of her greatest triumph, unable to reconcile her success with the tragedies she had witnessed. The plastic surgery that changed her face was symbolic of a deeper desire to become someone else, to leave behind the person who had been in that car. She spent decades in relative obscurity before finally finding the courage to tell her story in her memoir. Her revelation that the accident was one of the top traumas of her life, maybe the top one, helps explain the choices she made, the years she lost, the life she might have had if August 5, 1987 had been just another summer day. Martin Doherty, the man who lost his mother and sister, showed a grace that many people wouldn't have been able to muster. He forgave Matthew Broderick. He publicly acknowledged that the accident wasn't deliberate, that strong feelings at the time had given way to understanding and acceptance. But he also never got the closure of a face-to-face meeting, never got to hear directly from Broderick what happened or how he felt. The silence from Broderick, beyond that initial note of apology, spoke volumes about how difficult it was for the actor to confront what happened. The story of Matthew Broderick and Jennifer Grey's accident raises uncomfortable questions about celebrity justice. Would an ordinary person have received a $175 fine for a crash that killed two people? Would the charges have been reduced? Would the legal system have been as lenient? These questions don't have easy answers, but they're worth asking. The perception, fair or not, is that Broderick's fame and resources helped him avoid serious legal consequences. Whether that's true or not, it's what many people believe, and that belief has shaped how the story is remembered. But this story is about more than just justice or the lack of it. It's about how one moment can define multiple lifetimes. It's about the burden of survival and the weight of guilt that doesn't fade with time. It's about two young people in love whose relationship couldn't survive the trauma they shared. It's about a family that lost two of its members and had to find a way to forgive when the legal system failed to deliver accountability. It's about secrets kept for 35 years and the courage it takes to finally speak the truth. Jennifer Grey's decision to break her silence in 2022 was an act of bravery. She didn't have to tell the world about the worst day of her life. She could have kept it buried as she had for decades, but she chose to speak. To defend Broderick, to explain what it was like to be the only conscious person on that road, to admit that she still thinks about the Irish family all the time. Her honesty gave the public a fuller understanding of what happened and why. The accident that happened on August 5, 1987, serves as a reminder that fame and success don't protect you from tragedy. that sometimes terrible things happen with no clear explanation, no one to blame, no way to undo what's been done. It reminds us that the justice system doesn't always deliver justice, that money and fame can influence outcomes in ways that leave families devastated and communities outraged. It shows us that trauma doesn't fade just because time passes, that guilt can eat away at you for decades, that some wounds never fully heal. Matthew Broderick and Jennifer Gray are still alive, still carrying the weight of that day. Martin Doherty is still living with the loss of his mother and sister, still wondering what might have been if Broderick had taken the police officer's advice about a different route, or if the rain hadn't made the road slick, or if that split second had gone differently. Margaret Doherty and Anna Gallagher are gone, their lives cut short by an accident that never should have happened. This is the story that Hollywood tried to bury, the tragedy that lurks behind the smile of one of the 80s most beloved actors. It's a story of love and loss, of guilt and forgiveness, of justice denied and grace given anyway. It's a story that took 35 years to fully tell, and even now, some questions remain unanswered. But it's a story that matters, because it reminds us that behind every celebrity, behind every Hollywood fairy tale, there are real people with real pain, carrying real burdens that the cameras never see. The car accident in Ireland didn't just take 2 lives. It altered the trajectory of 2 careers, destroyed a relationship, created decades of trauma, and left a family searching for answers and closure they may never fully receive. It's a story that deserves to be told, not to tear down Matthew Broderick or to sensationalize tragedy, but to honor the memory of Margaret Doherty and Anna Gallagher, and to understand the complex web of consequences that followed that terrible day. More than 37 years later, the accident still resonates. It still matters. And now, finally, the full truth has been told.